It was like any other wedding day. Flowers arranged with care, chairs set up just so, and a buzz of anticipation laced with curiosity. Then, the minute Janelle opened the door of her car, it was evident that this was not your average wedding. A flurry of shutters clicked as pictures were taken, murmurs spread through the crowd, and the collective energy seemed electric. A presence hung in the air that suggested something special, something daring, something noteworthy about this wedding. All these years in the famous Sister Wives family, Janelle had always been regarded as being gentle, accommodating, and very private about her feelings. Today, however, she wore a different look altogether. It was one that exuded confidence, radiance, and no fear whatsoever. All, of course, were no strangers to the history that had unfolded before her. Complicated relationships, ups and downs emotionally, and the struggles that came with belonging to a polygamous family. It was, however, evident that she was trying to say that this day was hers, and nothing, including Kody, could detract from that. These initial steps were weighed down with anticipation. All the guests were holding their breaths, as if they were aware of something colossal that was about to occur. Some of the guests were whispering among themselves, trying to make an educated guess of who this unknown person could be. Who else could manage to capture the heart of Janelle after so many years? Right from the beginning, it was impossible to overlook her eyes, which were bright, determined, and bursting with emotion. It seemed like there was a combination of relief, happiness, and a bit of mischief in them, as if she had finally escaped the invisible binds that held her back in the life she had left behind. Each step that she took towards the altar seemed like an assertion of her newfound freedom, like she had taken charge of her happiness. On the other side of the room, Kody Brown was being watched by a sea of eyes. At first, he was unreadable, curiosity clashing with the nervous energy that was radiating from him. Kody had prided himself for so long on being the one who controlled the family dynamic. But with Janelle about to stride confidently into her new life, he is finding that is no longer the case. Kody's stoic face could not conceal the nervous reaction that was evident in his eyes. Even the other sister wives seemed taken aback by what was occurring. Decoration, artfully selected for its elegance and purity, seemed almost incidental in the face of what was truly taking center stage, the dynamic presence that Janelle exuded. It seemed that the scent of the flowers was even sweeter, the golden light streaming through the windows warmer, the very air alive with anticipation, as everyone in attendance could feel what was about to happen, that something of Janelle would alter everything. As she reached the front of the aisle, she momentarily stopped to let the significance of the moment sink in. All eyes were on her, but she wasn't looking at anyone in particular. She wasn't trying to gain their acceptance or their approval. She was merely embracing herself, realizing that she had the power in that moment. It was a far cry from what fans of her Sister Wives series had grown accustomed to seeing from her for all these years. She had dealt with complicated relationships, had compromised her own desires, and had tried to keep the peace in a home that was often fraught with turmoil. But not today. Today, she was fearless. Today, she was unstoppable. Guests leaned in to one another, their hushed tones speaking of the small yet important elements that were beginning to reveal themselves. A glint of something on her hand, a foretelling of what was to come. Necks were craned in anticipation. What could it be? What was Janelle hiding? The anticipation was almost too much to bear. Even the photographer held back. Realizing that the true tale of this wedding was not to be found among the flowers or the wedding venue, but with the woman at the center of it all. This expectation is not only experienced by the family members. Already, fans reacting to the live social media updates were buzzing with excitement. Tweets were flooding in with speculations about the wedding and Janelle's cryptic fiancé. Headlines were even being formed before the ceremony had concluded. Janelle's wedding leaves Sister Wives fans surprised. What is Sister Wives Janelle hiding? Kody's reaction is perfect. Janelle's entrance was more than just a physical walk down the aisle. It was a journey, says Barfod. It seemed like each step of that walk was a statement of strength, of self-discovery, of the strength to make a change. She had spent years of her life in a situation where her voice was often drowned out by Kody's presence in the polygamous family. Yet here she was, taking center stage, standing confidently, and making it clear that she was no longer that person. Even the smallest actions were full of significance. This is what it means to be a woman. The way she carries her flowers, the angle of her head, the beat of her walk. It was like she was trying to tell everyone that she had gotten back what was hers, that she had taken back her life. The room was quiet, not out of respect for the tradition, but because everyone recognized the weight of what was happening. Some of the guests were trying to keep their feelings back, realizing that they were onlookers for something more significant, the event of a woman taking back her power. And then, as she reached the altar, the suspense reached its peak. All eyes immediately turned to her hands. That's where the secret began to unravel. It was a small gleam that could not be overlooked, the start of the statement that would soon be made. All eyes were on her as the room held its collective breath. It was electrifying. When Janelle walked down that aisle, it was more than just the walk of a bride. It represented something much deeper, a statement that her happiness counted, that her decisions counted, that her freedom counted. At that moment, the energy in the room changed. It was no longer just a room for a wedding reception. It became a platform for empowerment, for change, for revelation. And though the ceremony had only just begun, one thing's for certain. This would not be an ordinary wedding ceremony. It was, after all, Janelle's special day, one that would mark the end of one chapter of her life and the beginning of another, not only for herself, but for her family, as well as for her fans, who waited with bated breath for whatever it is that she would do next. It was the start of something that would never be foreseeable, something that would reveal secrets, test egos, and show the real strength of a woman who was finally putting herself first. It was silent in the room, but the energy of what was about to happen was palpable. Every person in attendance would fix their gaze on one small but supremely important thing: Janelle's hand. On her finger was a ring unlike any that any of these people had ever laid eyes on. Not just an accessory, it held meaning, a secret that had taken months to formulate. This was the moment that would render Kody, her ex-husband, and eventually her own family members speechless. This ring was more than just precious metal or sparkling diamonds. It symbolized independence, empowerment, and finally finding one's life back. The secret of the ring was as unique as its design. This custom-made jewelry had one word engraved on it that only Janelle and her new husband knew about. These were words of affirmation, love, and personal strength that were engraved on the ring. This formed her personal mantra that was a secret for her, that told her that she was strong enough to get through tough times of psychological challenges, difficult family relationships, as well as being a sister wife. Now she is strong enough. "Did you see that?" a guest whispered at the wedding. "And that's no ordinary wedding ring." A cell phone or camera was cautiously lifted by some of the guests to record this incredible sign of a historic event that they were seeing. Some guests, who had attended numerous other prominent events, couldn't conceal their astonishment. The design itself is subtle yet statement-making, Janelle had once told me. A line of small, shimmering stones encircled the band, catching the light with each movement of the hand. It was, of course, the meaning behind the piece that truly counted. Each of the stones symbolized a step that she had taken, challenges overcome, victories achieved, milestones reached. This ring is about more than its beauty. It's about strength, freedom, and self-respect. Janelle had long been a woman who lived her life by the intricate instructions of a polygamous family. She was no longer setting the agenda. Her new husband, standing by her side, could not conceal his pride. He held her hand, pointing out the engraving with a knowing smile. "This is yours, a symbol of everything you've earned," he whispered softly. Though his voice rang with emotion, it was evident that this was something more than an expensive ring. It represented their respect for one another. As the camera zoomed in for a close-up shot, it became apparent that the engraving had a subtle shine to it. Social media blew up in minutes. Fans were speculating about the words, trying to figure out if it was a message for Kody, the ex-husband who had dominated their conversations with his ego for far too long. Comments were rolling in. "That ring says more than any word." "Janelle finally takes charge of Kody." "The secret ring wasn't about Kody or the past. It was about my own path of self-discovery," Janelle continued. "For so long, I had played a role that required me to be understanding, patient, and at times silent. I had learned to roll with the punches that came with living a polygamous life. It wasn't always easy. There were times when I had to sacrifice my own desires for the sake of my children, my family, my friends. Today, that ring symbolized that I would never again sacrifice my own happiness," she concluded. Reactions of the guests ranged from priceless moments of surprise, admiration, and disapproval, as some of them couldn't help but look deeper into the meaning of it all. This was more than just a wedding accessory. It was history in the making. A glance at the ring was a reminder that Janelle had taken charge of more than just her wedding. She took charge of her life. Kody stood momentarily stiffened in silence. This was the first time in years that he looked truly taken aback. His face went from one of courteous poise to something raw and far more exposed. Shock, astonishment, a flicker of remorse. He had taken such satisfaction in thinking himself the master of the family dynamic, in thinking he could dictate what happened here. Yet this small ring represented everything he no longer could control. The strength of Janelle was no longer concealed. It was there for everyone to see. Meanwhile, the sister wives were having mixed reactions. While some of them were quiet with admiration for the strength it took to make such a statement, other sister wives were sitting back thinking about their own decisions, realizing that this wedding was about more than just Janelle. The ring, no matter how small it looked, had become the focal point symbolizing strength, bravery, and an incredible personal victory. This was more than just family drama. It was a wake-up call for those of you at home who need to remember that it takes a lot of strength to claim your own power. Social media went wild with such hashtags as hashtag Janelle Power, hashtag Secret Ring, or hashtag Sister Wives Drama. Fanatics picked apart the wedding video, examining the ring itself, the body language of the couple, as well as the shocked looks on Kody's face. Social media fans couldn't get enough of it. And as the ceremony went on, the ring became a plot device on its own. Each gesture, each brush of her flowers, led back to that glinting ring. It was more than mere garnish, more than a signal that Janelle had finally entered into the life she was meant to live. This moment was not without its tensions, however. Kody's quiet presence reminded her of the challenges of the past, the complicated relationship dynamics, the ego struggles that had characterized much of her younger life. But then there was the ring, a victory in itself, a pictorial embodiment of the fact that Janelle had indeed moved on. Her happiness was infectious, spilling over into the room, and in that glow, even the toughest of guests could feel the authenticity of her decision. Amidst the applause and the quiet murmurs of support, something was whispered to Janelle by her new husband that made her softly laugh. It was a moment that was both public and private, a moment that suggested there was an understanding that this ring was more than a gift. It was an acknowledgement of their love, respect, and empowerment of one another. It was the beginning of their new life as a married couple, as well as a new beginning for the woman that is Janelle. The photographers were capturing every angle of the ring so that not one aspect of it or the reactions of the people surrounding it went unnoticed. It seemed that in every photo there was another story being conveyed, one of bravery, of love, of freedom. These were pictures that fans would dissect frame by frame for years to come. It was clear by the end of the ceremony that this ring had not only represented their marriage, it had become a representation of power regained, of choices made, of life lived. This little object had become a message that would be remembered for far more than just the celebration of their marriage. But as she raised her hand in the air to reveal the secret of the special ring for the very first time to the world, it is difficult not to feel the effect. That ring was more than a piece of jewelry. It represented a revolution. A revolution of self-respect, self-will, and self-act. At that moment, Janelle was no longer a sister wife. She was a symbol of women's empowerment. The secret ring had spoken louder than any words ever could, and it was something that everyone in that room, from guests to family to fans, could feel. And it was a moment that would be talked about for years to come, a moment that would change not only the wedding day, but the woman herself. While the wedding ceremony proceeded, the eyes of everyone were not only fixed on Janelle, but also on the man standing along with her. The entire world held its breath in anticipation of this special moment. Who was the person who finally managed to win the heart of a woman who had gone through so much? What type of love would be able to give her the freedom that she had long been deprived of? But this new lover of Janelle's was unlike any that her fans had yet witnessed in her life. Right from the onset, it was evident that he was unlike Kody, the husband that she had long been involved with. While Kody seemed like the type of person who could be dominating and very self-centered, this new husband of hers seemed like a respectable, patient, and strong individual. He was at the wedding, not just as a participant, but also as someone who appreciated Janelle for who she is. His gaze at her is saying it all. Each look radiates admiration, tenderness, and pride. He was not overwhelmed by her history or the drama that surrounded the sister wives' family. Rather, he is inspired by her strength, her independence, and the guts it took for her to move on to this new phase of her life. His taking her hand during the ceremony is more of a promise, and not just any promise, but the promise to support, uplift, and love her. It seemed easy enough from the outside, but the story that went with this individual was anything but ordinary. This person had known Janelle for months, and from day one, they appreciated the complexities that came with her life. He appreciated that living in the sister wives world is never an easy feat. However, he never backed down. He never asked her to conform to someone else's ideals. Instead, he accepted her for who she is, with no strings attached, with freedom that is unfettered. It was no secret that the guests of the wedding noticed the difference between Kody Brown and this new man that Janelle is involved with. While Kody had spent years trying to assert himself by talking over people, by dominating a situation, by showing the world, this new man of Janelle showed her through completely subtle means of body language. He showed her through the strength of his silence. Watching the ceremony, the interactions between Janelle and her new husband were almost hypnotic. He would reach out to brush a stray hair from her face, squeeze her hand, or bend closer to share a quiet joke. These small, private moments spoke far more than any public proclamation of feelings could. These were the qualities of a relationship that had developed out of respect, trust, and understanding, the things that Janelle had always wanted but never found. Viewers of the live broadcast could clearly tell that a difference had been made. Supporters took to social media with posts such as, "This is the love that Janelle deserves. Finally, a man who truly sees her. Kody could never." This is more than a reaction to the marriage ceremony. It is the recognition that Janelle was choosing something entirely of her own choosing. She chose to be with a man who celebrated her instead of diminishing her, who appreciated her independence instead of being threatened by it. This was more than a declaration of love. It was a statement of healing. Years of dealing with complicated relationships in polygamy had left her guarded. She had dealt with times of frustration, loneliness, and even heartbreak with the polygamous relationship structure. This new lover, though, reached into her very being and healed those wounds. He brought with him a warmth of emotion that she had not experienced in years. This wedding ceremony was more than just an event. It was the statement that finally she had found her emotional haven in this relationship. He brought such energy into the room. He was not like other men in the sister wives community who were looking for recognition or seeking acceptance. He let Janelle shine, be herself, and celebrate what made her unique. All of the compliments, the words of support, each one reminded her that she was free to live her life the way that she wanted. This is a true love story that the public had been waiting for. Kody's response to seeing Janelle with her new beau was evident. At first, he was trying to keep his composure, keeping any feelings hidden. However, as the ceremony progressed, it became apparent that Kody was clearly disturbed. He had spent years portraying a strong sense of power and control in the family. However, in this new setting, with a new lover by Janelle's side, Kody found that his ego-based power began to fall apart. It was no secret that Kody realized he could no longer wield the power that he thought he had. The relationship between Janelle and her new husband is something more than just purely romantic. It is a lesson in emotional intelligence and what it means to be a true partner. Every look, every smile, every little gesture of his told the story of a man who truly comprehended her, honored her, and appreciated her strength as an individual. He did not try to erase her history, or downplay her experiences, or make her feel like she owed everything to him for having survived what she had survived. No, he celebrated that history, that she had lived through what she had lived through precisely in order to become the incredible woman that she was. The ceremony itself became the backdrop for their love story. During the exchange of vows, it became evident that the promise was more than mere words. It was a promise made with feelings in mind. "I promise to support you," vowed her husband, "to honor your past, celebrate your present, and build our future together." These words were not only significant for the people who were gathered in the room, but for everyone who was watching too. It was more of a promise for Janelle to be married to her dreams of being recognized and appreciated. You could spot the little things that the guests noticed, observed one guest. The way he adjusted her veil, the manner by which he held her flowers, the manner by which he escorted her down the aisle. All of these things were significant. Added the guest. This is a man who not only loved her, but recognized the significance of this day. He recognized that the meaning of this wedding went far beyond a celebration of unity. It was a celebration of freedom, empowerment, and fresh starts. Social media went into frenzy with speculations and admiration. This is real love. Janelle finally found her happiness. Just look at that guy. It's as if he is made for her. These were some of the comments that went into torrents. Videos of the ceremony were quickly shared online, with people appreciating the warmth that characterized their relationship. But what lay beneath the admiration was a far more profound message. Janelle's relationship with her lover is clearly a statement about self-worth, about choosing to be strong enough to make the choices that make you happy. Author Candy Stetza explains. Janelle had spent years living in a situation where her voice was not heard, where her needs were placed on the back burner, where her identity was lost in a sea of family interactions. Now, with the new lover, she is finally able to let herself be who she wants to be, confident, radiant, in love with herself. At the end of the ceremony, one could tell that Janelle's new beau is more than just a beau. It is a symbol. It is a symbol of respect, authenticity, and maturity. It is a symbol of everything that Kody could never provide for her, of everything that Janelle deserves in life, of everything that the public had hoped that she could gain in life. Their romance is no longer a personal one. It is one that is a public inspiration for everyone. As the couple walked down the aisle hand in hand, their hands clasped together, smiles gleaming with happiness, the room exploded with applause. Everyone cheered. Cell phones recording the event as fans back home were left to celebrate. Janelle had made the right decision by choosing a lover who respected her past, her present, and her future. It is in that moment that the world was given something more than a wedding. It was given a woman taking back her life and a love that celebrated who she is. This new man standing by her side is more than a husband. He is a partner of this new chapter of her life, one who believes in her dreams, one who honors the journey that brought her to who she is. Janelle's new beau had shown up not only to accompany her on their wedding day, but to reshape the entire notion of what it means to understand the concepts of love, respect, and what it means to be a partner in the sister wives world. And far from the live footage of their romantic exchanges that production captured for the universe to witness, one thing was certain, that no matter what else took place in their life, Janelle Brown was finally the recipient of the one lover that would never be overshadowed. For years, Kody Brown had maintained an image of control, authority, and unshakable confidence. Often on the Sister Wives reality show, he was portrayed as a man who orchestrated family dynamics, ruled household decisions, and projected a calmly dominant presence. But as Janelle's wedding unfolded, that well-engineered persona began to crumble before the eyes of the world. The second Janelle emerged, resplendent and potent, in her white wedding dress, Kody's poised facade had slightly quivered. He did attempt to conceal his surprise, to keep up the illusion of his being in control, which all the while he had dearly depended on. It was impossible. With each step Janelle took toward her new husband, each laugh she shared, each bright smile, subtle shockwaves ran through him. He could feel, with growing intensity, that the influence he thought he had over her life had evaporated. It was not just the wedding that shook him. It was how Janelle celebrated herself, independence, and how openly happy she was without inhibitions. Her secret ring shone in the light, the most shining emblem of freedom and empowerment. Every time he saw that little band of gold with diamonds, it reminded Kody of what he did not have anymore, the right to order her life. For the very first time, the dominion he had established over several years was being embarrassed publicly. Kody's initial reactions were nuanced, clenching his jaw, a slight squinting of the eyes, slight adjustments in posture. The cracks were there, though, the inner war one could almost see if one knew him well enough. One part of him wanted to hold on to this image of serene command. Another could not deny the fact that this woman he had worked at keeping under his thumb all this time had finally decided upon a life that didn't put him in the center of it. The wedding guests, well aware of Kody's presence, started to note his reactions. A few exchanged quiet glances, realizing that the display of independence by Janelle had hit a nerve. Kody's composure was a hallmark of his public persona, and he'd started to break. The man who seemed almost untouchable in the family dynamic suddenly was shown as vulnerable, shaken, and upset. Social media blew up within seconds. Viewers who were tuning in live or reading updates couldn't help but remark on Kody's differential disposition. "Kody looks so uncomfortable," one user said. Another added, "Janelle just took him down a notch with just one look." Viewers across platforms analyzed each reaction, the slightest flare of the eyebrows, and every moment wherein his confidence slipped. It was more than a personal death. It was a public one. Kody's ego had long been intertwined with the narrative that he could manage, control, and even define the happiness of the sister wives. Yet here he was, watching the woman he long had believed stood under his influence, walking freely, radiant, and unapologetically joyful beside a man who treated her as an equal. And then it sunk in. His control was an illusion, and Janelle just proved it in the most theatrical way possible. Every touch, every belly laugh, every loving look in each other's eyes was a stark difference between this life with Kody and the one she chose for herself. A soft touch, a shared laugh, a loving glance, all gestures that Kody just could not do, not for lack of trying, but because they came from a place of authenticity, respect, and a partnership of equals. The room seemed to take note as Kody's energy began to shift. Guests whispered and subtly pointed out the tension oozing from him as his posture stiffened, his eyes darting occasionally at the floor, and the subtleness of his discomfort evident. It was as if the years of a polished exterior had finally met their match. A woman who refused to be confined by societal expectations, polygamous traditions, or ego-driven control. As the ceremony continued, Kody was in greater and greater inner turmoil. For years, he had been at the center of the Sister Wives reality TV show, but today he was there merely as a spectator. Janelle was letting her happiness shine freely, and there was little room left for his egoistic impact. Every time she smiled, every time she hugged her new husband, he chipped away at the image he had been so carefully building for decades. Fans at home couldn't help but comment on the irony. Here was Kody, who for years had projected control and dominance, now a man struggling to contain his emotions. The internet abuzz, Kody's ego just got a reality check, and Janelle finally exposed him. It was one of those moments that transcend family drama onto being a cultural spectacle. People weren't just viewing a wedding. They were viewing the fall of an illusion of power held for a long time. Even the sister wives seemed to feel the shift. Some were quietly reflective, acknowledging the deep symbolism of the moment. Others appeared to be decidedly impressed by Janelle's courage and the way in which she stated herself. Kody, for all of his years projecting an aura of authority, could literally do nothing more than stand and watch as the woman who once was under his shadow took center stage and reshaped the entire narrative. Even the subtle gestures in the room drove the message home. Janelle's secret ring glinted as she reached for her bouquet, her new husband gently guiding her. Every glance they shared, every smile, was a visual statement. Happiness and empowerment could not be dictated by ego or control. Kody, for all his attempts at composure, couldn't ignore it. It all came to a head during the vows. As Janelle and her new husband promised their deepest love to each other, the atmosphere in the room completely changed. Kody's face, hitherto carefully neutral, showed breaks in discomfort and unbelief. This man, who for years had believed he could manipulate family dynamics, push through decisions, and show who was boss, was now confronted with one undeniable fact. Love, respect, and empowerment cannot be forced. It was poetic justice. Janelle had reclaimed not only her happiness, but also her narrative. She had made this wedding a stage where Kody's ego was no longer front-page news. Her new chapter was visible, radiant, and undeniable. The room was full of applause and cheers, with the understanding of the power of choice radiating collectively across the room. Social media exploded as the video clips of Kody's reaction went viral. Viewers analyzed every expression, gesture, and subtle shift in posture. Hashtags like Kody shocked, hashtag Janelle power, and hashtag Sister Wives drama trended worldwide. People were not only watching a wedding, but also witnessing the fall of an illusion that had been held for so long and celebrating the triumph of a woman who had finally decided to choose herself. The irony was evident. Kody had spent years exerting control over the family and thinking that he could control outcomes. All of that control meant nothing in the face of true love, respect, and empowerment. The wedding was far more than the current recognition of Janelle's union, but a symbolic taking down of an ego that had overshadowed sister wives for too long. The unease in Kody was palpable from the very beginning of the reception into Janelle and her new husband's first dance. The contrast of his strained demeanor against their obvious happiness was not to be ignored. Every step on the dance floor, each smile, and each laugh served as a silent testament to what happiness truly looks like. Something he was quite powerless to command, manipulate, or replicate. One undeniable truth was left at the end of the day. Janelle had broken Kody's ego, not with confrontation, but with merriment, independence, and unapologetic happiness. The room, the guests, and viewers from around the world knew this wasn't just a wedding, but a defining moment, a very public declaration of empowerment. And a story-defining tale of sister wives to be retold for years to come. By the time the night was done, Kody had gone from chief to bystander. Janelle had regained her happiness and rewritten the story of her life in a different way, leaving Kody and everyone watching stunned. The shattered ego was not about anger or revenge. Rather, it was quite to the contrary. Neither was it a factor, because true happiness, respect, and empowerment can't be taken away from someone. They must be chosen. And Janelle had chosen hers, loudly, proudly, and forever. But as the wedding festivities finally got underway, the air in that room flipped from that one suspended moment of tense expectation to nothing but celebration. No longer rigid in her wedding gown, the celebratory atmosphere had Janelle floating with freedom and confidence, fully indulging in the happiness of the moment. The secret ring glinted on her finger, shining bright not only in the love of her new husband, but also in the independence and strength she had fought so hard to redeem. This was more than a wedding. This was a declaration, a vivid announcement that a new chapter had started in Janelle's life, characterized by her choices, her happiness, and her self-respect. Every laugh, every dance, every shared glance with her new husband spoke to a freedom she had not known in years. Her smile shone bright, not because of the event itself, but because of the liberation it represented. This was more than a husband. He was a partner, friend, and supporter of the journey she had uniquely traveled. There wasn't an ulterior motive to overtake her, compete with her ego, or dominate in any way as there had been in previous relationships. Every action, every encouraging whisper, every touch spoke volumes of a relationship hewn out of equality, respect, and genuine love. Together, they rewrote a new story of what it was to finally find happiness after such emotional convolutions. As the wedding unfolded, the guests, which included the sister wives, began to take in the gravity of the situation. Many visibly teared up, taken by the weight of Janelle's decision. Others quietly reflected on their own lives, recognizing that this day was about more than romance. It was about courage, resilience, and self-determination. Janelle had set an example. True empowerment comes not from confrontation, but from embracing one's authentic path and refusing to compromise one's happiness for the comfort or ego of others. Still standing, Kody couldn't believe this was happening. All his efforts at coolness had completely disappeared. Janelle was laughing and sharing private jokes with her new husband and dancing as if no one else existed in the room. If anyone was ever blind, it was very clear that for the first time tonight, his control over Janelle's life was gone. The authority he assumed was no longer valid. The joy, the empowerment, and love taken to be Janelle's alone, and no one could ever take it from her. Meanwhile, social media went abuzz with clips, photos, and reactions. Every second had fans all over the world hooked. The ring that was a secret, the most intimate gestures, and the groovy happiness oozing out of Janelle and her husband. The timelines were flooded with hashtag Janelle New Beginning, hashtag Sister Wives Wedding, and hashtag Empowered Janelle. Viewers analyzed each frame of the moment and noticed the complete contrast between Janelle's confident glow and Kody's steadily growing unease. The dance floor became the heart of the celebration. First, Janelle and her husband shared their first dance as a married couple, moving across the room with elegance and joy. The music, rigorously chosen in a romantic and uplifting key, echoed the emotional journey of this bride. Every step seemed symbolic, a movement forward, leaving the past behind, embracing a future filled with possibilities. Guests were carried by the energy, cheering and clapping, fully participating in this emotional moment. Janelle's interactions with her new husband were laced with subtle intimacy, reassuring whispers, brushing a strand of hair from her face, holding her hand with gentle confidence. These small touches spoke to a narrative of partnership viewers had been yearning to see. Love without condition, support without expectation, connection without compromise. This relationship allowed her to shine, restraint-free, to laugh without inhibition, and to hold on to happiness that was hers, whole and complete. The symbolic weight of that secret ring continued to resonate well after the evening was over. Those who caught the engraving on the inside of the band knew what it meant. Not an accessory, but a badge of survival, a flex of personal strength, and a declaration of freedom. Every time it caught the light, it reminded everyone in that room and everyone watching from home that Janelle had taken control of her narrative and refused to let anyone, not even Kody, define her life. Heartfelt speeches, laughter, and tears of joy spilled from the reception. Family members and close friends shared stories about Janelle's journey, pulling out the courage it takes to embrace this moment. Each story furthered that core idea. This wedding was more about the celebration of love than it was a testament to self-empowerment, authenticity, and the power of making bold choices. Yet indeed, there has been a transformation visible in the way she talks and goes about things. All that hesitation and quiet restraint that marked those earlier years have disappeared. In their place stands this confident woman in her decisions, joyful in her present, and hopeful for her future. The idea of liberation she radiates was palpable, touching everyone in the room. Around her, guests whispered the remarkable change they were seeing, understanding that this is not an occasion of a wedding, but a profound rebirth. The night went on with dancing, laughter, and quiet, intimate moments. Janelle and her husband exchanged private smiles, brief kisses, and moments suspended in time. These were precious, for they stood for what she had struggled for: the freedom to love, to be herself without being bound, embracing life on her terms. Each gesture told a story of empowerment, no matter how small, reverberating far beyond the wedding hall's closed doors. Kody's subdued presence continued to be a silent backdrop in the celebration. Such was the contrast. A man whose ego had overshadowed theirs for so many years, and a woman whose strength, independence, and joy could just not be contained anymore. If anything, this made the poignancy of this moment even deeper. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about spite. It was about taking back a life and choosing happiness without apology. The message was clear to everyone as the evening wore on. Janelle had chosen herself. She'd had chosen love that elevated, freedom that empowered, and life that celebrated herself. The wedding had been not only the union of two hearts, but also a celebration of courage, resilience, and self-determination. To those viewers watching from home, this was no reality story. This was one about human strength, the importance of self-respect, and the power of making choices in conformity with what one genuinely wants. Janelle's journey brought to everyone's notice that happiness is not something to beg for. It is something to be arrogated, cared for, and protected avidly. As the night drew to a close, Janelle and her husband stood together, hand in hand, overlooking the crowd of guests. Their smiles, both radiant and genuine, depicted all that had taken place: love, empowerment, and the thrill of a new beginning. The secret ring glimmered in view, symbolic of her journey and the victories she had won, as the room seemed to hum with energy in recognition that one had been part of something remarkable. For several weeks and months after the wedding, Janelle's courage remained under celebration by fans. Clips from the ceremony spread like wildfire, sparking discussions about empowerment, personal growth, and the importance of self-love. Janelle had found not only love, but herself. In finding herself, she had inspired so many viewers to reflect upon their journeys toward happiness. This wedding, besides being a chapter in the Sister Wives saga, would go down in history as one that represented reclaiming one's life. She had made that courageous step, shattering old dynamics and embracing this new life that had love, respect, and freedom. As she looked at her new husband, holding the secret ring that was a symbol of it all that she had fought for, she knew this was just the beginning. Fireworks, laughter, and cheers concluded the night. Guests embraced, whispered congratulations, and celebrated the reunion of not just two people in marriage, but a victory of the human spirit. Janelle's journey had come full circle, from quiet endurance to bold empowerment, from restrained hope to radiant joy. She chose love, freedom, and happiness, and it would be never taken away. In that instant, all knew, Janelle's new beginning was more than a wedding. It was a revolution, a story of empowerment, a testimony to the power of choosing oneself. And for the millions of viewers from home, it let them know, no matter the past, no matter the struggles, it's possible to have happiness if one is brave enough to claim it.